Hello fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I'm going to be going over the new book by one of my favorite writers, and that is The City and Its Uncertain Walls by Haruki Murakami. I've been waiting for this one for a while because it's connected to another of my favorite Murakami novels, but we'll get into that in a bit. First, let me give you a quick synopsis. This book tells the story of a young man whose first love explains to him that she is the shadow of herself and that the real her is stuck in a town with a clock tower that never tells the time and has a river that runs through it and a library that she works at. And this town becomes kind of an obsession between this couple, and they write about it and they fill it out with details and they describe it and work on it together, and it's like this project that is theirs, and it kind of becomes a symbol of their love, at which point this woman disappears. And eventually, much later in his life, the narrator finds himself fallen into this actual world. Oh, I forgot to mention the world had unicorns. The most unique unicorns you'll find in fantasy literature, in my opinion. This is a story of a man looking back on his first love. This is a story about being lost in life. This is a story about the desire for simplicity, for a place of kind of perfect simplicity, and what people will do to get to that place or try to leave that place, and whether that place is exactly what you want it to be. Okay, the story of the publication of this novel is a crazy mess. This is a rewrite of a novella that was written in 1980. Right after the book that Murakami considers his first actual real novel, his first professional novel. He doesn't consider his first two novels to be part of his professional bibliography. And that was The Wild Sheep Chase. Right after he wrote The Wild Sheep Chase, which is a wonderful novel that I'll be talking about on the channel eventually. Right after he wrote that, he wrote this novella called The Town and Its Uncertain Walls, or The City and Its Uncertain Walls, depending on how you want to translate it. And it was about a young couple that created this, or felt like the woman felt like she was stuck in this town with no time and with unicorns, and that she was just a shadow. And this creation of this town for Murakami was really, really important to him. But he didn't feel like he did it well, and he regrets that he published it in a Japanese literary magazine at the time. I can't find a copy of this. I would love a copy of this. Nobody has... I know there's one person I think I've come across that translated it into English, but he's not going to share. And Murakami's definitely not going to share. If anybody knows where there's a copy of this, please let me know. Even in Japanese, I would love to try to read that in Japanese. I'd have to get my kanji dictionary out. So he then was hired professionally to write a novel, and he ended up writing Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World, and this is the first Alfred Birnbaum translation, the first American edition of Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. And what he says, and he says this in the afterwords of this novel, which I found really interesting. The afterword was incredible. Short, but really, really told me a lot about him writing Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. And what he said is he felt like he wanted to rewrite that 1980 novella, but he couldn't really figure it out, so he didn't like what he was coming up with. So instead, he decided to have that going on, and at the same time write a really cool action sci-fi novel, and then he would just kind of hope they'd go together. And that's where Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World came together, and they really come together. They are incredible. But he still didn't feel that he gave the plot all of the love he feels like it deserves. So he wanted to give this another go, and he started rewriting that novella in 2020. in March of 2020, right when COVID hit. And so this is Murakami's COVID novel. And it feels like that, the way this town is presented. And even the town in the real world where the narrator goes feels kind of like a town that really came from a COVID imagination. It really does. He finished it, and it was released in Japan on April 13th of 2023. And then Philip Gabrielli's translation, that's this one, came out right around Thanksgiving of 2024. And I basically started reading it right after that. The prose are great. I like Murakami, and I like Gabrielli's, I hope I'm saying that name right. If I'm not, I'm sorry. I like his translation style. This is a book that the book itself disappears and you see the pictures play out in your mind. It's really, the prose disappear. It's really, really well done. Haruki Murakami, and this goes all the way back to The Wild Sheep Chase, has a tendency to write his characters into isolation spaces, and he really likes to play in those isolation spaces, and a lot of it can be enjoyable, but sometimes it can get a little long-winded, and this felt a little long-winded in the middle. But of the last 2 or 3 Murakami books, this one really feels like Murakami to me. I really enjoyed it. And Killing Commendatore was also Murakami, but that one starts with the isolation, and I just couldn't penetrate that. I honestly got so bored, and even the concept of the hole in the backyard was so interesting, but it just wasn't enough for me. I couldn't keep it up. It was too slow, and it was too many pages for so little going on. And I find things like Murakami describing how good of a cook his characters are or what they're cooking not very interesting. The first time I read it, the first time I ever read any Murakami, I found that really interesting. But now it's so overdone that I can't take it. I'm going to be honest, what this novel feels like to me, quite honestly, is a perfect summation of the Murakami obsessions that we've come to know and hate, or know and love. The internet, of course, has Haruki Murakami bingo you can look up, and believe me, you'll get a bingo reading this, because all of Murakami's obsessions are on display here. Women disappearing, cooking food, talking about jazz, all that kind of stuff occurs in this book. And to me, it seemed like a perfect end to the career. And I hate to say that, because Murakami, I don't know if he's done writing. I don't know if he's got another novel coming out. I don't have any idea. But this, to me, felt like a wrap-up of his career for me. Because for me, it all started with Hard-Boiled Wonderland and The End of the World. And this is such a unique retelling of a part of that story that it just seems like a perfect loop, a perfect bow on his works. Do I recommend it? Yes, I do. It's a fun read. However, I want to add a caveat to that, and that is, if you have not read Hard-Boiled Wonderland and The End of the World, I really highly recommend you start here. I believe this is a much better book than this. And they're both good books, but this is a level of awesome that I think will blow your mind. It is so good. I was in college, and I was reading a ton of very interesting classic literature, and then I took a class and they threw this on me, and it changed how I looked at fiction. This novel is so incredible and absolutely worth a read. So while I do recommend that you read this, if you're a Haruki Murakami fan, you'll enjoy it. If you're not, if this is the first Murakami you read, I think it will really show you what kind of a unique writer he can be. But start here. start here. This is the place to begin. This is wild. And it's unfortunate because all the sci-fi booktubers that I see talk about Murakami always talk about IQ 84, which in my opinion is way too long of a novel. And I know people love it, and that's incredible. And I know there's good things in it. For me, it didn't earn, like, again, there's these isolation points that just go on and on in that book that aren't, in my opinion, necessary. Nor do I think it's anywhere near Murakami's best work. And I think it's because that's the one that always got mentioned. So every time somebody tries to read Murakami sci-fi, any sci-fi booktuber tries to read Murakami sci-fi, they always go to IQ 84. Again, start here. This is so much better than IQ 84. This novel will blow your mind. It's so good. I can't push this enough, which makes it hard to push this right now because this was fun, but this is the one you should read. Okay, I'm going to stop harping on that, but I do want to say one last thing, and that is that Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World was just retranslated by J. Rubin that includes more parts that apparently Alfred Birnbaum left out. I'm about 40 pages in already, and so far this translation is, in my opinion, the flow of this is harder to read than Birnbaum's so far. I'm going to say Birnbaum's is the better translation, although this is the more direct translation. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to make a video about direct translations versus translations that find the heart of the work and try to express that heart, sometimes meaning that they don't really translate as much word to word. Yeah, so far, I would say that this one I feel like I have to pay more attention to. This feels like a bit more of a scholarly read, whereas Birnbaum's just felt like the most kick-ass science fiction book. Smart, awesome, wild character. So I would recommend Birnbaum's so far. But I'm not done with that one. So I'm going to see. I haven't really gotten to anything new that was left out of Birnbaum's. So we'll see if I find something in here that totally blows my mind or changes the story. Okay, I am going to do a deep reading of The City and Its Uncertain Walls, so you can expect that coming up soon. All right. If you watched this to the end, thank you very much. If you liked it, please click like. And if you like this kind of content, please click subscribe because we're making a lot more of it in the future. Also, we do have a Patreon. I'm constantly putting content over there as well that is exclusive to that. So if you'd like to see more videos from me and also become part of the Liminal Spaces community, go check out the Patreon and join it if you're interested. All right. Thank you so much for watching.